I wanted to finish off these tutorials just with a couple of other issues that I saw with what was submitted. One is I noticed that quite a few of you using brightness contrast. In my recordings I said don't use brightness contrast, it lightens up everything uniformly. You should be using at the very least levels. If you look at the histogram on levels, the very far right slider is our highlights, middle one is midtones, and left one is shadows. I can see right now that I'm not even close to bringing my highlights in. The histogram actually starts right here. So I usually bring my highlights in by moving the slider so it at least touches the edges of the histogram. Likewise with the shadows. Um, Once I get past here, I'm starting to clip my shadows. As to whether or not you clip, you really shouldn't clip, but I do know a lot of photographers, myself included, for creative reasons, do choose to clip highlights and shadows in some cases. And then last of all, I'm able to adjust my midtones. So these are kind of the middle grey levels within the image. So this allows me to bring in brightness and contrast, but adjusting them along that sliding scale between highlights, midtones, and shadows, which you cannot do with brightness contrast. What I noticed with a lot of people's work that were using brightness contrast is everything was just overly brightened. So this is a better way of creating the adjustments. I also wanted to show you how to do dodging and burning. I know many of you know about the dodge and burn tool, but for retouching we usually use its own layer. This saves duplicating the whole background layer, and the way that we do it is you either need to use the panel menu, which is here, and choose new layer, or you use Shift Command N. So Command N normally makes a new layer and it'll just put a blank layer on there. We need to bring up the new layer dialog box. That's why Shift Command N does that. So this I would call Dodge Burn, and here I change my blending mode to overlay, and this allows me to fill with an overlay neutral color 50% gray. So here I end up with a gray dodge burn layer on here. So what this enables me to do now is to go into my paintbrush. I can use a very low opacity. I'm actually going to set the opacity to about 5%. So you don't want to paint with this on 100. If you try that, you'll see what will happen. And this will enable me to go in. I'm going to zoom up on here. It's quite a low resolution file. And if I paint with white, which is my foreground color right now, this will dodge the area. So I can just paint in with a nice soft paintbrush and build up the areas that I want to dodge. So just painting in. And it's a layer that I can turn on and off, and I can also work back into if I make a mistake. So I can always clone the grey back over the top if I make any kind of error with it. So this is typically what people use for dodging and burning. Now if I switch to my burn brush, X on the keyboard switches between the two. So now black is my foreground colour. If I wanted to just pull in some highlights on the top of the cheekbones here, I want a line along the side of the nose. This is where knowing how to apply makeup really helps, because darkening up along the sides of the nose allow you to make the nose appear thinner without changing the shape of it using Liquify. If I want to take out the shadows at any point, like down here, I can switch back to my white very quickly, just hitting X on the keyboard. It's a very quick workflow method, and it stops me having to keep switching between tools. So this is another reason that it's widely used in industry, so that you don't have to keep going back over here and switching between your dodge burn tools or holding down the shift key to switch between the two. You can just have your finger hovering over X and switch between each one. So now you can see exactly what I've changed with my dodge burn layer. So I've evened out the skin tone, taken out some of the patches, darkened up the cheekbones. So we use this layer to actually re-sculpt the face. A lot of people would also come back in, they would darken up the lips a little bit, just touch up the any makeup around the eyes. I'm not all that sure that she's wearing makeup, but you can certainly give the illusion of it. And then when I zoom out, you'll be able to see what a difference that makes. The last thing that I wanted to show you, which doesn't necessarily relate to anything that I've done here, but it's easier just to kind of fold it into this tutorial. There's a key which will allow us, a keyboard command which will allow us to collapse all of our layers and merge them to a new layer. So Command Option Shift E. You want to be on your top layer when you do this. This will give me a flattened version of the file. I can turn all these other layers off, and here I have a merged layer, but I haven't lost my previous layers. This will be important for compositing. When you do compositing, usually once you get to the end of your composite, there's a point at which you want to merge all your layers together, just to do any kind of last cleanup. So if I wanted to come in and now do any last cleanup, I could do that on a merged layer. I wanted to also show you what else the apply image command does. We used it for split frequency. If you go image, apply image, so that's using the image menu. Right now I have it still for what I did with the split frequency. If you set this to a soft light blend, then here we want our layers to be on merged, and then our channel, you can set it to red, green, or blue. And you'll see that what it does is it not only increases contrast, but it will also bring out detail in the skin. So it depends which channel you use. Usually you find the green or the blue holds most of the skin texture. If I go to the red channel, it will actually lighten and soften the skin. But it's a technique that's often used just to do some interesting post-production looks if you want kind of that really high contrast, low saturation portraiture that you see frequently these days. If you put it on overlay, it'll be even more dramatic. So this is a handy technique for actually bringing out texture. I'm going to save this on overlay. I'm going to do it on the green channel because I want a little bit more texture in there. Click OK. And you can see this is what we started with. In fact, that's a cleaned up image, and this is what we finished with. So you can use, a variety of techniques just to really control the final post-production on the image.